China, and I know that in the Chinese official mass media would just regard that organization as a kind of separatist. But okay, I'm just curious that it is reported that you've never been to Tibet, so how can you just, from what sources do you get the information from Tibet, and how can you ensure that you are on behalf of the Tibetan people? And thank you.
Well, I get that question all the time. Number one, I've not been to Tibet because the Chinese government did not allow me to go to Tibet. I went to Beijing, I went to Shanghai, I went to Wutaishan. So when I was in Beijing, I requested Chinese officials that I be allowed to go to Lhasa, because you always say that, you know, any Tibetan can come and see for themselves how good Tibet is and how happy Tibetans are. And I said, I want to go and see myself. And they said they don't have enough people to receive me in Lhasa. And I said, you have 1.2 billion Han Chinese. In fact, I made a personal request because the previous year my late father had passed away. And I said, as a Tibetan, it's very important that son goes to a holy temple and light a butter lamp in memory of your late father. And I said, I'll just fly in the morning and come back in the evening. You know, it was personal for me. And still, the Chinese official gave me the same response. We don't have enough people to receive you in Lhasa. So can you imagine what I was thinking? Obviously, when I first made the request, it was a request. Obviously, any Tibetan would like to go to Tibet, whether the Chinese government says or not. You come where you're welcome to come see the situation yourself. But when I made the second request, it was personal, you know. When you get the same response, you feel like, you know, I'm dealing with this kind of people. No consideration whatsoever for very personal, emotional, and family reasons. So that's why. Now, how do I know about Tibet? There are plenty of sources. In fact, you might have read that I spent the last 16 years at Harvard Law School, and I met hundreds and hundreds of Chinese students and scholars, and I've organized meetings between Chinese and Tibetans. I've invited some of the top Chinese scholars from Peida, Minzu Dashi, Tsinghua, and all that. I've had many rounds of discussions with Chinese, and I often tell them, they come out believing that they're convinced that situation in Tibet is very good, and they give you all kinds of reasons. Oh, you can have more than one children, there are more buildings, water, electricity, all that. And I said, what is the source of your information about Tibetans? And they say, oh, Xinhua, People's Daily, CCTV. And I said, normally, how much do you trust this Chinese media when it comes to your life, when it comes to China and Chinese people? They say, oh, 50-50. 50 is true, 50 is not true. Then I asked them, which portion of 50% on Tibet you think is not true? Because you talk to me as though whatever you read about Tibet in Chinese media is true. But when it comes to your life, 50% is not true. So I said, first of all, let's begin with which portion of 50% is not true. Now, how do I know about Tibet? Many ways. First, I've met many Tibetans who have fled from Tibet, who are settled in India. In fact, I just met some Tibetans who have arrived from Tibet just recently, and who are students, who worked for Tungdabu, who worked for PSB, Public Security Bureau, who worked as teachers, all kinds. So these are the sources through which I get information as far as Tibet is concerned.
You mentioned that you met a lot lot of Tibetan people, but the fact is we have to admit that the Tibet as a region in China is still pretty comparatively impoverished, and not many not many inborn Tibetan students born in Tibet have opportunities to study abroad or just work abroad. So probably are most of the Tibetan people you already met are that not born in Tibet or just probably like you. And so, and also, and things you said, lots of Chinese official mass medias, they are pretty biased and prejudiced. But what about the media here? And do you think, how can you just use a double standard to judge the media? Thank you.
I think it seems I didn't made it clear. When I said I met Tibetans recently, I meant Tibetans from Tibet. I just met some in Virginia who are from Tibet, who just came few months to study here. And then other Tibetans who fled Tibet and have come to India. Monks, students, because we have a Tibetan reception center in Dharamsala. And a few hundred Tibetans come there every year. In fact, before 2008, anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 Tibetans come there. So we get first-hand information about Tibet from Tibetans who have fled Tibet. And those who have worked as teachers, as students, as I said, in Tungdambu and all. So these are the sources. And there are many other sources as well. Now, again, I think in your first question, you added something, which I forgot to answer, which you said, so how can I represent Tibetans from Tibet? And that raises the question, how can Chinese government represent the Tibetans in Tibet? Or the party secretary of Tibet Autonomous Region represent Tibetans in Tibet? They were not voted by Tibetans. Right?
But comparatively, Chinese government can build the highway, the railway for Tibetan people. But what about you? Can you build a bridge? Can you build a highway? Can you improve the traffic transportation? Can you just do anything for Tibetan people? Thank you.
That's a very good question. Now, if you take that logic, if you build highways, if you build houses, then Tibetans should remain part of China. Then I think British built Hong Kong. It was a fishing village when British took over. But in 1997, Chinese government said we should transfer it back to us. British could have made the argument, no, look at this, it was just a slow fishing village. We have transformed it into the most expensive real estate in the world. But Chinese government said nothing doing. Whatever you have built is not important. Whether Hong Kong people's life is improved or not is not important. You have to transfer it back to us. Why? Because it belongs to us, isn't it?
Here is a question for you. I'm from China, and my only concern for Tibet is the human rights. So away from all the things you talk about the Chinese media or the Chinese government's things, if Tibet as an independent country or independent state, how do you ensure, or what will you do to improve the living standard and the human rights of the local citizen?
Like any country or a region or government, the role of leadership or the government is to improve the livelihood of the people. Now, how would a Tibetan leader would do treat Tibetan people as far as human rights are concerned? I think answer lies, maybe I can borrow Bhutan. Bhutan, they're doing pretty well as far as their human rights and livelihood is concerned. And Outer Mongolia, they're doing pretty well on their own. So if we have to govern Tibet ourselves, we will do relatively fine because we have done it before for hundreds of years. We can do it. One last question. I see her. Yeah.
We have
standing.
one last question. Thank you. I'm Chinese, but first of all, before my question, I really like to take the opportunity to thank you for coming here and engaging us in this conversation in a very open, transparent style. And I'd like to mention that just a week ago, last Sunday, the Minister of Public Health in China visited the university, and I asked the student organizer if I could attend the meeting, and the answer was no, because I was not invited. But then now I tell myself that's okay, I can meet a prime minister today. So I think compared to a Chinese counterpart, you actually put yourself on a higher moral ground. Yeah. Thank you. And as for my question, I'm just wondering if the United States government plays any kind of role in terms of fostering this dialogue between China and also the Tibet exile government, and also with the incoming presidential election in the States, do you perceive any possible policy change if there is a change in the White House? Thank you.
Yes, there are several ifs. If there is a change in the White House or not, that we will know on November 6th, actually. I think as far as U.S. government's China policy is concerned, is you have to go by what you read in the paper and from the speeches made by both President Barack Obama and Governor Mitt Romney. Normally, the U.S. government, they don't have major changes as far as China is concerned. But President Obama declared U.S. foreign policy to pivot towards Asia, perhaps with China as, if not one of the main component of its foreign policy in Asia. So in that sense, there might be more emphasis, more focus on Asia, and already I think they have begun to do so, and on China as well. So in that sense, that there might be that shift. Now, U.S. government always urges Tibetans and Chinese to solve the issue through dialogue. There was a human rights dialogue in August between, strategic dialogue between Chinese and American counterpart, and one component was Tibet. And but from what I heard was the head of the Chinese delegation was quite vocal and quite animated when it came to whole day. The Chinese delegation was fine discussing about all other issues. When it came to Tibet and mentioning His Holiness Dalai Lama's name, and my name was also mentioned, I believe, oh, they were very, very animated. So hopefully that kind of emotion and animation will be less with Xi Jinping at helm. And then, we will look at the issue more rationally and solve the issue. From our side, this has been a long-standing goal from our side to solve the issue of Tibet peacefully through dialogue. Now, in that sense, perhaps because you said it, I'll also share it here. We make ourselves available. When His Holiness Dalai Lama comes to Minnesota or wherever he goes, we make it a point to meet with Chinese students and scholars. Whether we get questions, emotional questions, or questions based on ignorance or informed or not, we welcome, because we have to have dialogue. Ultimately, Chinese and Tibetan people, we have to solve this issue. Because you mentioned human rights, let me give you one fact, actually, that you can check. in Lhasa, 70% of businesses, private entrepreneurship, hotels, restaurants, even taxis, are owned or run by Chinese. 50% of Communist Party members in Tibet Autonomous Region, the local Communist Party, more than 50% are Chinese. Now, on the one hand, the Chinese government says, in Tibet Autonomous Region, 92% of the population is Tibetan. Only 8% are Chinese or non-Tibetans. Now, if 8% of population controls 50% of the Communist Party apparatus, from postman to cook to the top leadership, how would Tibetans feel? Of the 13 top Communist Party leaders in Lhasa, 7, if I'm not wrong, are Chinese. Of the remaining 6, one is half Chinese, other is married to Chinese, or other brother-in-law is Chinese, things like that, you see. And the top judges are Chinese, top policemen are Chinese, military personnel are Chinese. Even the local People's Congress, majority are Tibetan, but the standing committee of the local People's Congress, majority are Chinese. So how would Tibetans feel sitting there in Lhasa, thinking when Chinese army first moved in, they say, we are going to build all these things for you. Our presence here is to benefit you Tibetan people. You will be master of your own area. Then after 50, now 60 years, what you see around, there are a lot of buildings, yes, the railway, yes, but more Chinese come to Tibet through the railway. More natural resources is taken out of Tibet through this railway line. And then, in fact, you can Google, there's a picture of a Chinese shop advertising job vacancy, which says that if you are Chinese, you will get 50 renminbi a day. And if you are Tibetan, you will get 30 renminbi a day. In Lhasa, the capital city of Tibet, how would you feel if there is a signpost in Beijing saying, if you're American, we give you $50 a day. If you're Chinese, you get $30 a day. How would you feel? So these are facts. And then 40% of high school and college graduates, Tibetans, are unemployed. They protested before the employment agency in Lhasa because they are unemployed. So even if you work hard, even if you get a college degree, even if you get high school degree, if you don't get jobs, how would you feel? So these are facts, and then that's why I said the hardline policy has failed, and it will continue to fail. That's why Tibetans are now resentful, and not only resentful, they are protesting in a very drastic form through self-immolations. Now, why or who would choose to die than leave? Normally, nobody would choose to die. Even if someone pinches you, you say ouch, and in fact maybe slap back. But Tibetans are not harming Chinese or Chinese army personnel or even Chinese shopkeeper or Chinese taxi driver, but are harming oneself and burning oneself as a sign of protest. So this is the situation. But as a human being, to conclude this remark actually, I want to end on a hopeful note that there will be more moderation on the part of the Chinese government and realization that the present policy is not working, and then decide to resolve the issue of Tibet peacefully through dialogue. I tried at Harvard, organized 7 major conferences inviting Chinese scholars. In fact, 2 meetings in 2003 and 2009 were between Chinese students and scholars and His Holiness Dalai Lama, very early on. We have not solved the issue, but we have had many rounds of dialogue, and through dialogue, a better understanding of the situation, and hopefully a little better foundation to resolve the issue of Tibet. We will continue to have differences, but through differences, we learn about each other, and then one day soon, solve the issue of Tibet, and then hopefully we will meet in Lhasa. Thank you.